the misunderstanding there is that there's only one way to earn points, and that's for what you put on a credit card. So on a cashback card, you put $1 million and you get 2% back, right? If you run your own practice or whatnot, have a lot of supplies.
$1 million on a credit card.
Yeah. So you're literally getting 2% back on every dollar you spend. But that's what we consider a slow way to earn points. There are fast ways to earn travel reward points.
Welcome to the Doctor's Eyes Only podcast, brought to you by Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, where we are on a mission to help the highest caliber physicians achieve wealth that matters. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Doctor's Eyes Only podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Oschman, and today I am here with Dr. Kelly Wright, who is better known as Points and Miles Doc, and we are going to be talking all things points and miles for doctors. So Dr. Kelly Wright is an academic, minimally invasive gynecologic surgeon, division director, and funded researcher in Los Angeles with a passion for sustainability in the healthcare industry. She's the creator and founder of Points and Miles Doc, a platform for teaching physicians and other high-income professionals how to leverage points and miles to prevent burnout through meaningful travel experiences. Sustainability in the environment, surgery, and career are core principles to her message. Welcome, Kelly. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the intro. And I know minimally invasive gynecologic surgery is a mouthful. And so we abbreviate it as MIGS to make it easier. It's a pretty niche surgical specialty. So a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's after doing your training in OBGYN for residency, it's a fellowship in minimally invasive surgery for essentially non-cancerous women conditions. So it's, we spend a lot of our time in the operating room, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you obviously spend a lot of time in the operating room and then a lot of time exploring all other places with your points and miles and all of that. So actually, we had recently a conversation with a doctor who was talking about kind of making the most of the finances of being able to travel and really make sure that you're getting fulfillment out of your life and the experiences and all of that outside of work. And one of the things that she had mentioned was points and miles and, finding ways to leverage that in order to make your money go further. So it's so exciting to have you here so we can kind of continue what she teased in that episode. That was Nomad MD. For those of you who listened to that episode.
Awesome. She's so cool. Yeah. And there's some really good data showing travel is important to physicians. I think the 2024 Medscape Physician Wellness Survey said that 95% of doctors said travel was either important or very important to their happiness and overall well-being. But also a recent JAMA article said that most physicians take less than 3 weeks of vacation per year, even though many physician contracts come with an average of 5 weeks of PTO. So we're very lucky actually in our common contract being so much time off. And then physicians who did take so little time were more likely to be burned out. And one of the reasons for physicians not taking time off was due to financial stress. So I really see the world of points and miles as a way to mitigate that financial stress, to say, I'm going to offset the cost of this thing that's very important to me so I can put the cash that I would have otherwise spent on my travel into things I need to pay off, like my student loans, my new mortgage that I waited so long to get, and start investing and saving. Travel is never free. And if you see people talking, free travel, yes, I mean, it's significantly reduced cost. But what I really see it as offsetting those opportunity costs of where physicians can then put their money elsewhere and be saved from that stress.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And that's what you said, most physicians take 3 weeks off. My dad's an interventional cardiologist. That's how I got into doing this for physicians. And he's the definition of, I think he would take 2 weeks a year for, my entire growing up. And we took great vacations over those 2 weeks, don't get me wrong. But knowing that he probably did have more time in his contract, and maybe just didn't feel like he could take it without feeling guilty for leaving partners with more of a burden, or like he had to work harder to catch up when he came back, or, that sort of thing. I don't know if cost played into it, but that makes perfect sense when you're talking about it, because traveling to great locations can be pretty expensive, especially if you have 2, 3 kids that you want to take along with you.
Exactly.
As the mom of 3 little kids, that really adds up. So
100%. A family vacation, even to Disney with a couple of kids, can be in the 5 figures easily, and that's your maybe 1 week, and then you feel like, okay, I've used my entire travel budget and I can't go anywhere else. But the points and miles can just expand that so that you can have more freedom to feel like you can take time off in a structured fashion, which I feel like is really important for physicians to have something to look forward to. And then also a system in place where it's shared equally among partners. It's happening with a certain amount of frequency so that everybody feels like it's fair.
So let's rewind. How did you get into this in the first place? Because funny enough, I didn't know that your name was Kelly until I started looking, knowing that you were going to come on the show. I just knew you as Points and Miles Doc. So tell us, how did Dr. Kelly Wright become Points and Miles Doc? How did that start?
Yeah, well, it started organically maybe about 10 years ago. I guess going way, way back. I grew up in Dallas. We were, friends with American Airlines pilots, our neighbors, growing up. And my parents had one of the very early on credit cards for participating in American Airlines loyalty program. So even as a kid, I had this sense that was like, oh, you can use a credit card and get points for it. But it was just this general sense. And I didn't really, of course, understand the details or nuances or even how to redeem points when it came to it on that side. In 2015, my wife is in footwear. She designs and develops footwear. So she has a really cool job. And she's traveling all over the world, traveling to Asia and racking up all these points as part of her job. So we were learning about points, but again, not really understanding how to use them or optimize them. And so I thought, well, let me just look into the status and points. I just started Googling and it took me to the Points Guy website. Of course, that was the first thing that had popped up. And I clicked and started reading. And I remember sitting that day and just going down a rabbit hole for hours and hours and hours, like something unlocked in my brain. I was like, I knew the concept of points and this is how to use them and optimize them. So it really started organically there. And just getting the basic understanding of things like, how does a FICO credit score work? Is it really damaging to open a lot of cards? That seems really scary and risky. It seems like risky financial behavior when we're always taught, have one card, no annual fee, pay it off in full, never have a balance. And those principles are important, but also understanding how banks essentially grade you is important too. And there can be things, if you minimize your lines of credit, it can actually hurt you later on.
Yeah.
So
we actually have a whole episode about that. If anyone's interested just in credit score, we have a whole episode where I just talked about what influences your credit score and how counterintuitive credit is to kind of those financial principles that you were taught about responsibly using credit.
Yes, 100%. And it's such an interesting thing. If you look at the background of FICO, is really to level the playing field so that banks judged you based on your habits or your background and not based on what you looked like when you're sitting in front of them. So I learned about that. We started opening cards and started making redemptions the following year. And then those redemptions just got bigger and bigger. Like, I want to fly Emirates first class and take a shower on a plane. I want to fly ANA first class in like the little cube and get pajamas and eat caviar and sushi. And so all of these big aspirations, that things we would never pay for, tens of thousands of dollars worth of trips, started to become reality. And I was talking about points so much and sharing about points so much at work and at home and in life. I think I'm like, people are getting tired of me talking. I need to create a platform. I'm like, I'm too busy for a blog. Twitter is too short. Let me start on Instagram and see if I can just start putting some of this stuff out there and see if it resonates with other physicians. And that was in 2022. And now my platform has grown a little bit, and it's been really fun to engage in people who are interested in this hobby. And we almost like escalate each other because it's like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? And there's these things going on. And it's really a fun thing. I do look at it like a hobby, even though it is a huge financial benefit to us. So I keep a spreadsheet of all of our redemptions. I've kept a spreadsheet since 2016. And I can see going back up until this time, I redeemed about 6.8 million points, all different types of points, for $380,000 worth of travel. That's really incredible. So that's about over, 10 years. That's a lot of travel. And that is money that we didn't spend, that instead we're able to put aside and save and invest. And we do have really aggressive savings goals. We try to put aside 50% of what we take home, or a little more than 50%.
I love hearing that. That's awesome.
Because I want to pay my future self first, but I don't want to forego all of the living today to look forward to that one point in time, because we as physicians acutely know that it's not guaranteed. So you have to live today and you have to plan for tomorrow. And I think points gives us that perfect combination of being able to take this time in these big trips, these really meaningful vacations, while also putting that extra money aside for when we retire.
I love how you frame that, thinking about the opportunity cost. It's like the money we're not spending on travel. Like, assume that you would be taking the trips anyway. You may not be doing it in as luxurious of a capacity as you're able to with the redemptions, but you would be taking these trips anyway. You're able to use the money that you would have spent on the trips to do things like fund your future self, fund kids' educations, give to causes that you care about, and save a little tax in doing that, and then spend the points on the trips. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And then when you look at it too, from the other side, so that's the redeeming side and the opportunity cost of the cash value of the redemptions. But on the points earning side too, when you start to learn what you can get back from credit cards, you learn that expenses which were previously a burden, like taxes, like putting money in your 529s, paying your student loans, even paying rent these days, all of that can be converted into points now. So you're essentially getting a reward for the things that you're spending on anyway. And it takes these really bad things, taxes, and turns them into something like, oh, well, I know my property tax payment is going to result in 200,000 Amex membership rewards, which will be a wonderful trip. So it really turns it around and makes those expenses not so burdensome.
Yeah, I know. I think it was Dr. Points and Passports, if you know her, who had put up something at one point about paying her taxes on a credit card. And she was like, here's the extra fee that they charge you for credit card processing, the IRS. But then she's like, here's what I'm going to get back for doing that. And this is what that will fund for me. So it's totally worth it. Like, I'm in the black for paying. And I thought that was such a great way to frame it for a world that I know very little about. So I love that reframing to say, I have to spend this money, but also I can get something for it.
Yeah, you get these rewards, and it comes back to what's really going on in the points and miles industry. And I think it's so funny because we think about airlines and hotels, they're giving us something, but they're not. Airlines and hotels are points banks that have hospitality services on the side. Like, their points are so much more valuable than what they actually provide as a service. And even back all the way to 2005, I think it was the chairman of the Federal Reserve who said that airline miles were the most valuable currency in the world, and they were more valuable than all the dollars, US dollars in circulation at that time. During the pandemic, the airlines really used their miles programs as leverage to get loans from the government. I mean, they leveraged billions of dollars, of those loyalty programs to get loans, which kept them running through the pandemic. So the way points and miles work is that airlines and hotels or different hospitality agencies sell their points to credit card companies, to banks, who and then give those points as rewards or reimbursements, or basically as an award for spending on their cards. And that's how it, yes, exactly, a prize. And that's how it works. So the airlines are incentivized to sell these points because they get money for it. It keeps them afloat. And then credit cards are incentivized to give those points out because then it incentivizes opening their cards and spending on their cards. So they get the annual fee and the interchange fee. And then as consumers, we get these big rewards. And so we should be taking advantage of that because that's how the system works. And and so once you learn that, you start to realize, oh, okay, this system is created in a way where this consumer can play along in the game and reap really large rewards for it. So that's where it all comes from.
Well, and I think about one of the reasons that I enjoy working with doctors as clients on financial planning is doctors are so goal oriented. Like they're ambitious. They're like, you give them a goal and they will drive to that goal. I'm speaking broadly, of course, but I'm thinking about that idea of these are prizes, they're for the taking. Go win them. And I'm excited. I should be doing this.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, when you calculate the return, and one of the things about one of the arguments would be, well, like it's complicated and you have to spend all your time looking into this. And why not just use a 2% cash back card and get 2% back on everything? The misunderstanding there is that there's only one way to earn points, and that's for what you put on a credit card. So on a cash back card, you put $1 million and you get 2% back, right? If you run your own practice or whatnot, have a lot of supplies.
$1 million on a credit card.
Yeah. So you're literally getting 2% back on every dollar you spend. But that's what we consider a slow way to earn points. There are fast ways to earn travel reward points. And that includes things like the welcome offers I'm talking about. So American Express says, here's 200,000 points for $10,000 of spend over a couple of months. That's a huge return. That's 20 points per dollar. That's not 2% back. That's 20% back.
Yeah.
So a lot of the Points and Miles hobby is about finding these great deals, these really big, fast returns on your investment, and capitalizing on those. And that's how you can earn so many points and have these high returns that are like, 9, 10 cents on the dollar rather than a 2% return on what you're spending. A 2% return, if you don't want to travel, is great. Use credit cards and get the protections. Right. That's not going to be enough to travel if that's what you want to do with the return from your credit card.
The time is always which I now think in, following you and following some others that talk about these topics, my reticence to even dive into any of this has always been, it seems like a lot to keep up with. It seems like a lot of time. There's no way that's actually worth it. Like it's got to be something these people enjoy. And there's no way that it's actually worth it if I were thinking of like return on my time. I think I've changed my belief on that. So I'm curious, because you talk about this spreadsheet that you have where you've kept all of your redemptions and, you have all of that. Do you have a sense of how much time, and maybe it's not you because this is also like a passion of yours, but how much time would someone have to spend to get a reasonable return on their time in getting these kinds of travel rewards?
Yeah. So I've even calculated that into some of my, value redemption. So I think in 2024, I wrote all this out. It got something like, $88,000 worth of value out of points in travel.
Okay.
And how many hours did I spend, looking for rewards, keeping track of things, and then making the redemptions? And you do get faster at it over time.
I would hope.
It does get to the point where looking for a points booking becomes as fast as looking for a cash booking. I would say once you've made a couple of redemptions. But even if accounting for 20 hours of time calculating this stuff, maybe $300 an hour, it's still like way, way more than I'm going to get cash back by using just one
Yeah.
card. So I think when you think about getting into points and miles, maybe there's an upfront like knowledge investment. So you're going to spend some hours either reading or taking a course or following people on Instagram to start to learn the basics about how it works. Or listening to these podcasts. It's just like learning about finances too, right?
Yeah.
You're going to spend several hours like learning about these things and then hopefully making good decisions and then automating things so that you never have to think about it again or you just check it every quarter.
Yeah.
And it's similar with points. So once you get the base knowledge and you start looking for offers, there's actually blogs that keep updated lists of the best offers at any one given time. So when you're looking for credit cards, there's already like collected information that's free to use to look for these welcome offers. So you have a big expense coming up. You got your property taxes due. You're like, hey, I'm ready to open a card. You can easily find these best offers that are already collected for you. You can use that card until you've met the welcome offer. So some people are like, well, what about using this card for this? And how do you keep all of those things straight? And again, you learn that over time. There are apps that help you with it if you are just starting out. But if you're doing the thing where you're getting a welcome offer every couple of months and you're putting spend on one card to reach that offer every couple of months, it actually adds some simplicity because you're like, oh, I'm just going to use this card for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to switch to another one. So a misconception is, oh, I have to open all these cards right away. And I say, maybe every couple of months. And actually that's reasonable. The banks don't want to see that you're opening tons and tons of credit all at once. A better long-term strategy is to spread it out like every 60 to 90 days or more.
Yeah.
So you think about the time investment to look into the cards, and then you think about the time investment to actually make the booking, probably a couple of hours. I would say after 2 to 3 bookings, that makes somebody like proficient enough where they at least know where to begin, know how to go about it and find what they want. So like everything, it is an upfront investment, but once you set things into motion, just like your finances, and you have a plan for how it goes, a lot of it is automated and you just check it every quarter like you would maybe your 401k statements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like that analogy. And I it already sounds a little bit more doable to me, thinking, oh, okay, you get a welcome offer, you meet this spend, then you get the next welcome offer, you meet the spend.
Exactly.
And you're not trying to, because I always thought like, oh, you're trying to keep track of like 20 credit cards or something. And that's not what you're describing at all.
Exactly. And so even now, so 10 years in between my spouse and I, we have, I think 30 cards at this time.
Okay.
Again, that's over it's over a very long amount of time. But how many cards do I keep in my wallet that I actually use for spending on a day-to-day basis? It's probably 3 cards.
Yeah, the same 3 I keep in my wallet. I mean, I would think 3 cards, but I also only keep 3 cards. So again, it seems a little more doable as you're talking practically about how you live it.
Exactly. And you think about, okay, if I'm actually pulling out my wallet to spend money on something, like what is it going to be? It's probably going to be groceries or dining, which is Amex Gold, 4 times points. It may be at a pharmacy. So it's Chase Freedom Unlimited. That's 3 times points. Or it may be some random spend that is going to be 2 times points on like a Capital One Venture X. So you'll keep the cards in your wallet that I'm going to be rotating through these when I put spend on them in a physical location. Outside of that, if you're paying something online, you just automate it. You put the credit card in that maximizes that payment. All of our philanthropy is on a 2 times points card, Capital One Venture X. And so every month, when that payment goes to those nonprofits, boom, I'm automatically getting like the highest return on those payments. So you set up things that way you don't have to think about it, and then you just keep a minimum amount of cards that you're physically spending on at one time.
Imagine that you're me. I mean, I'm you, however many years ago. And this is not going to probably become my passion. I have way too many things going on, but I'm like, I'm intrigued. I would like to start. How would one, like, what are the resources? What do I need to, where do I need to go? What do I need? Like, how would I get started?
Yeah, I'll just mention too for a newbie getting into it, the concept of co-branded cards versus transferable currencies, because that can trip people up a little bit.
Okay.
So co-branded cards are the cards that actually have the brand of the airline or hotel written on it.
Oh,
So
yeah, like a Southwest card or the American Airlines
Exactly.
card you talked about. Okay.
Exactly. So those cards earn points in one system. They earn points of the brand that's written on the card. That makes sense, right? Once points are in a system, they don't leave. So I can't use my American Airlines points and like transfer them over to Southwest and book a Southwest flight.
Right.
So when you use a co-branded card, just know that those points are stuck in that system. And co-branded cards can be really useful for benefits, like they might get you priority boarding or they might get you a free checked bag. So they can have these benefits that you might need for your travels, but it's not necessarily how we want to earn points.
Okay.
We want to earn transferable points. These are the big banks. These are the Chase Ultimate Rewards, the American Express membership rewards, the Capital One Venture Miles. Because these points that you earned can then be transferred, hence the name transferable points, to multiple different airline and hotel brands. And so that gives us the flexibility when we're trying to book travel, because sometimes our schedules are not flexible, or sometimes award availability is not there. And so we need to pivot and look at another brand. So we want to start with transferable earning as part of getting started. And I would recommend that for somebody starting out, almost working backwards. So think about in your mind, maybe where you want to go in the next 1 to 2 years, or take your family on a vacation. Because you always have to know where you are and where you want to go to be able to have like a map. Google Maps needs your start, your origin, and your destination to be able to make a plan for you.
Yeah.
So think about where you want to go and the end point. And then I actually use a free website called flightconnections.com. I love this website because you can put in an origin or a destination and it shows you every flight and every airline that goes to that location.
Oh, cool.
And so I always use that as a starting point because I want to know, well, how do I get somewhere? What are the airlines that even go there? That can help guide me on like how many points I need or what type of airline I'm looking at when I want to target my points earnings. But the truth is that most of the transferable rewards currencies have a lot of overlap in the airlines that they include. And so going from like thinking about your destination and maybe looking up what airlines go there, take a look at the different rewards currencies and see which airlines they have that could get you to your destination. And so that way I know that I'm going to have the points on hand to actually get me there, as opposed to, again, if I earn Southwest points, but I want to go to India, gosh, it's just not going to, it's not going to work out. You can look at the different transferable points, and these are mostly like simple Google searches, like transfer partners of the different banks. And you can see. And then next, look for the best welcome offers available. I like to use a website called Frequent Miler. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just listen to all their podcasts. I get their newsletter, and they do a great job of keeping all of the best credit card offers on a page. So it's like a single page, and it's like every best credit card offer for every card, every bank. And that's where I go when I'm looking to see what are the best offers available. And you start with that. You start with the best welcome offer available in the card group that probably makes sense for the destination you want to go to. Once you do that and you start accumulating, you can start adding in more cards. But even in the first year, 1 card, 2 cards can get you to your first vacation. And once you become more comfortable, then you can open more cards, be more specific with your spending, and maybe look for bigger and bigger trips.
I can see how this would get addicting. Like, as you're talking, I'm like, once you do it once, because how long would it take? I mean, is it realistic to think that in 12 months, you could be paying for a trip if you kind of worked backwards like you're talking about? I guess it would depend on what trip, and, there would be some nuance to it. But what would be the kind of payoff on that initial, you've gotten started?
Yeah, I think 1 to 2 years, mostly because for a lot of these things, you wanna be booking far in advance, and so it can take
Great
you
point. Yeah.
time, 3 to 6 months or more to accumulate those points. So you'd be, looking in that time frame, but it is reasonable for that first trip to, be happening within that first, like, 18 months or so,
Yeah.
and it's really exciting. This is where I think points can grow with you. So when I was in 2015, when I was a young attending and I still had a little bit of loans to pay off, I had that
Mhm.
new mortgage, lots of areas competing for my money, but we still had time off and wanted to travel. So I was using points, maybe at not the highest value return I could get, but
Yeah.
just to make sure that I wasn't paying out of pocket for these trips.
Yeah.
And then as our loans are paid off, our mortgage was paid down, our salaries were going up, our
Mhm.
investments were getting bigger. Now we're looking for, hey, I want a really meaningful travel experience. I want to stay at a local, safari camp in India to see tigers, which we did last year, which was amazing. Now we're using points to offset the getting there aspect and that more like corporate experience so we can spend a lot on that local experience because that's what's
Yeah.
meaningful to us. Points grow with you. You can start small when you need it to be small, and you can really blow it up when you want it to be big. And that's what I love about it.
I did get a sense when you were talking like earlier, when you were kind of talking about your own spreadsheet and all of that, where I was like, I got a sense that there was kind of a snowball effect where it's like once you figure out what
Absolutely.
you're doing, once you have some points in the bank, so to speak, if you're kind of thinking about them as a currency, that they grow at a faster rate as you go. So that's actually really cool to know that if you make that initial investment and you stick with it, they can get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I looked back, the first year of travel value was like $12,000. And $12,000 to a young attending is
Awesome.
everything, is incredible. So the fact we were able to do that like with 3 cards, minimal annual fees, was amazing. And then to get to the point where you're spending, yeah, $88,000 a
Yeah.
year on travel experiences that you're still not paying cash for, but it's just you understand the game more so you can up that level.
Mhm.
It is a snowball effect, and again, you can just adjust it for where you are in life.
Yeah. No, that's great. You have made this seem so much more doable. Even just in kind of the working backwards, like pick a trip you would like to take and pick a time frame and then work your way backwards and figure out where you're going to spend, or I wouldn't say where you're going to spend your money. It's like where you're going to put the money you're already spending because we're all spending money on credit cards all the time. That's just that sounds so much simpler than, me starting with a Google search and having no where
It
I'm
is
going to get to.
Yeah, it is overwhelming. There is the great thing about points is it's really opened up in the last couple years and it's become accessible to many more people and I love that. But maybe it's made it like a little more overwhelming and all the info that's out there isn't as legit as it used to be, when it was just a handful of writers. So when people ask, what is one like great resource for getting started? And in truth, I haven't really found like the optimum place. I did make a course for medical professionals because I felt like that was lacking. So for people who wanted to get started, going from like zero to expert in just a couple hours,
Mhm.
um, I made a course for that, and there are lots of other
And you get to
courses
that through
out
your
there.
Instagram? How would someone get to that
Yeah,
if they're listening and want to take
through
it?
my yeah, through my Instagram and through my webpage, which is pointsandmilesdoc.com. And it would take roughly 6 hours, and I've had people go through it and say, "Oh, we've already gotten, $10,000 back in travel." I really wanted to be available to consult with people and help them book travel, but just with my schedule being full-time academic, clinical, like, there was no way I could, um help every person take their booking from start to finish. So I'm always happy to answer questions, but I made the course to serve as a proxy for the information I would otherwise give out that way.
So that's a great resource we'll make sure to link to, and I'm sure you'll have people that will jump on and take advantage of that because, and I might be one of them. So I'm curious as we kind of wrap up here. Number one, what is the best trip that you have taken? You've been to all of these amazing places. What was your favorite?
Oh, I think it's like saying who's your favorite child, but there are
The one I'm
some.
looking at right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I think because I live in such a big city, my goal is always to get out into nature and wild spaces as much as possible. So anytime there's a chance to see animals and then combine that with like a luxurious plane ride, it's a wonderful trip. This past year, like as I mentioned, we went to India and seeing the tigers. We got to see 8 tigers, including a mom and 2 cubs, which you don't think you think India is just busy but no, they have these beautiful natural spaces and parks and safaris. So we flew Qatar Q Suites to get there, which is Qatar's business class product, which is fantastic. And then we flew Singapore Suites on our way home, which I was like, I can do lunges in this first class seat. This is crazy.
God.
This is so much space. Like, it's too much space. First world problems. But it was wonderful to be able to pay for that with points because it's not about even so like, oh, I'm just waiting to get there to begin my experience, right? Like we have limited time off. We want to enjoy it. I do hundreds of cases a year. I'm to the point where I like have overuse injuries and my shoulders hurt. And so sitting in an economy seat for a long time to me just isn't a vacation.
Mhm.
And if I get to be comfortable as soon as we leave, that becomes part of the vacation. It becomes the extra days, and it's a wonderful experience. So last year was a big year. It was great. We did that tiger safari, and then we also went to South Africa and did a safari in Sabi
Amazing.
Sands and flew Lufthansa first class on the way back. And again, to go from like you're in a truck looking at leopards, and then later that night you are laying in a bed drinking champagne, eating caviar on your way to go home. There's just
amazing.
no better way I can think to spend my time. And I would say my hard-earned money, even with my hard-earned money, we could not afford something like that. So I'll say my hard-earned points to be able to actually have these experiences rather than not have them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's like the picture of luxury. Just thinking
Yes.
about, I mean, the travel is the not fun part of any trip.
Right.
You're thinking about like, okay, I'm sitting upright for how long and I have to crawl over people to go to the bathroom. You know, you're thinking of kind of the typical travel experience versus the picture that you are painting. And it sounds like, I mean, I love it. It's like it extends your vacation, it extends your experience. You look forward to the travel itself.
That's
Because
right.
a little bit of delight.
That's right. Yes, it's a big delight to say that I can like leave my house and know I'm going to be comfortable from start to finish, even in these experiences which are not traditionally comfortable, like you described.
Yeah.
I think that's important as you go further along in your career and you do start to get this just wear and tear, overuse of your body, your brain. You need those extra days, especially if you feel compressed in how much time you can take off at one time. You need those, like the bookends of the trip to also be a pleasant experience so that you come back refreshed and not completely worn out and takes you 2-3 days to recover.
Okay, so the last question I have for you, and this is kind of a tradition at our show,
Okay.
is we have this concept that we talk about at Bestia, which is not just we're helping doctors build wealth, we're aiming to help them build wealth that matters. So the fact that wealth goes well beyond the financial, it goes into how you're living your life, how you're showing up for your loved ones, how you're living what matters before, you know, you're not working to an end point to do that, you're doing it now. So I'm curious to know, and I've gotten a little bit of a sense as we've talked, but what does wealth that matters mean to you?
Yeah, I love that. I saw that on your website. And to me that means just being really personal in what you want. I listen to a lot of Ramit Sethi, and I love how he talks about like cut down on expenses on the things you don't care about and just spend lavishly on the things that you're really interested in. And I didn't know about his method before, but it was something we'd kind of been doing. Like we've always lived in really high cost of living areas, but we've lived modestly, small homes, and not really interested in cars or things. That's just us. If that's important to somebody, then they should spend on it. But to be able to instead have money for these experiences is what really matters to us. When I think about the long term, trying to find that exact sweet spot where like maybe work is optional, and then how would I structure like my time and my finances around that when work is maybe not in clinical medicine anymore? That's like the future wealth that matters that I'm not so sure about. But in the moment, it is like preventing burnout, continuing my clinical career, and spending extravagantly with cash or points on these experiences, and kind of minimizing other things in our life that we don't care about as much.
I think that's a great perspective. We're not trying to be frugal across the board. We're trying to be intentional with spending and making sure that spending matches values. And you already mentioned like a high savings rate because you want to make sure that that continues well into the future and you get to that work optional point and all of that. I think that's amazing. I feel inspired.
I think I'm inspired too. I love this discussion.
My Vestia partner, Jackie Denson, who I think met you at Brave Enough, that put us in touch. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen and have you on the show. Like I said, I'm going to go start working backwards from a trip that we've been talking about, maybe taking our kids on, like kind of first really big trip.
Ooh, I love it.
18 months or so. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm sure there are so many of the doctors that are listening who are excited to get started as well and actually feel like maybe they could make something of this. Because you have a gift for breaking things down and making it seem easy to get started. So thank you so much for everything you shared. It was so great to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great.
Awesome. And to all of you who are listening, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Please do subscribe to Doctor's Eyes Only so that you don't miss any of our other amazing episodes that are coming up. And we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Doctor's Eyes Only podcast. We hope today's conversation advanced your journey toward wealth that matters. Make sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our amazing episodes. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Vestia Advisors, LLC. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be construed as legal or tax advice and is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified attorney or tax advisor. This information is not an offer or a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Before investing, you should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses associated with investment products. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's own goals, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Diversification and asset allocation do not ensure a profit or guarantee against loss. Consult your financial professional before making any investments. Investment advisory services offered through Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, and Vestia Advisors, LLC. Securities offered through Osdale Financial Partners, Inc., 5187 Utica Ridge Road, Davenport, Iowa, 52807. Member, FINRA, SIPC. Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, Vestia Advisors, LLC, and Osdale Financial Partners, Inc. are independently owned and operated.